By now, you've probably heard about the semiconductor shortage, and if you haven't, you've definitely been affected by it sometime in the last year and a half. Semiconductors are in everything. All of our modern electronics, from your TVs, smartphones, solar panels, computers, cars, webcams, smart devices, smart fridges, smart toilets, Wait, that exists? What do you know? More than 1 trillion semiconductors are made every year to try and keep up with the ever-growing demand. Just this year alone, global demand is expected to increase by 12.5%. And these chips are incredibly important to all sectors of our economy. They are the #1 contributor to labor productivity growth, support 1.6 million jobs, and are integral in healthcare, national security, and have become a huge domestic priority to bring manufacturing back into the country. So, what happened? If you guessed the pandemic kicked this shortage off, well, you'd be right. But there's more to it than that. Yes, the pandemic did expose the fragility of the global semiconductor supply chain. You'd think that such a critical component at the heart of our modern society would provide a market environment that would incentivize enough competition for suppliers to keep up, but the truth is, the barrier for entry into the market is incredibly high.
You just can't say, I'm going to start making chips. Not many companies can walk out there and just drop $38 billion, $20 billion. That's a lot. So you will see recently, a lot of companies are giving up the manufacturing because it's so expensive. There's a lot of things that go into play. I need bare land or I take over another facility, and you need infrastructure. Procurement, you got to buy the chemicals, you got to make sure you can pay to get rid of the waste. And then you need external supply, and you need a lot of equipment. You just can't walk in there and say, okay, I'm just going to build chips today. It doesn't work that way.
So not only did the pandemic cause manufacturing at these fabs to come to a standstill, but things quickly rebounded and then demand exploded, with a lot of the tech needed to work remotely. So once production was up and running again, the fabs just couldn't really keep up. This, of course, led to increased prices, decreased availability, product shortages, and companies having to adjust their production focus to items of higher profitability and demand. All of this compounded in America by the fact that more than 90% of microchip manufacturing occurs overseas, in places like Taiwan, South Korea, and China. And we haven't even mentioned yet what is really the major contributing factor, just how complex semiconductors really are.
You go to build a $20 billion fab, it's basically the most complex building that humans have ever created. Microelectronic devices like computer chips are made from semiconductors. Semiconductors are materials that have properties in between that of an insulator, like a piece of glass, and a metal, like aluminum. And the most common one is silicon, which is refined from sand. Those chips start as what we call a wafer. It's a thin, round, flat sheet of a material, like a dinner plate. In order to take a semiconductor material and convert it into a computer chip, a lot of layers have to be added and subtracted. And those layers can be of all sorts of different materials. In fact, the large majority of the periodic table ends up in a completed electronic device like an iPhone. Each piece of equipment in a semiconductor fab is designed to do something very, very specific. And these pieces of equipment are complex. In addition, you have to check along the way to make sure that you haven't introduced a defect. Something as small as a single piece of dust can ruin an entire computer chip because the feature sizes of the patterns on that wafer are minuscule. Nanometers, they're say 1,000 times smaller, 10,000 times smaller than a human hair.
The manufacturing time required for a finished semiconductor wafer itself is long and extensive, taking anywhere between 12 and 20 weeks. Making a chip is one of the most, if not the most, capital and R&D intensive manufacturing processes on Earth. Semiconductor R&D is on the cutting edge of innovation, as companies like Intel and Apple continue to make them smaller and more efficient. This again leads to fewer new companies able to enter the mix, and now that manufacturing is largely global, with TSMC in Taiwan making 63% of the global share, the supply chain is spread far and wide. All these factors, from the complexity of the production process, the capital required, and the pandemic, led to where we are today. A perfect storm. The industry is doing all it can in the short term to increase production, focusing on increased utilization at each fab from the typical 80% to as high as 90 to 100%. In the long term, however, more fabs will need to be created to continue scaling with demand. These efforts are in motion, but as we've learned, they take time and considerable resources. Congress just passed the CHIPS Act, a bipartisan bill bringing semiconductor manufacturing back to the States, and we are poised here in Arizona to be a part of America's semiconductor revolution. But that's not all that's going on. Last spring, both TSMC and Intel announced plans to build 3 semiconductor fabs in the Phoenix region, with TSMC purchasing enough land to possibly build 5 more fabs, which would invest billions of dollars more in our economy. Samsung also shortlisted Phoenix as a possible factory site, and ASU will be able to play a huge part in this as well.
Semiconductors and microelectronics are important to the state of Arizona. It's been a vital part of the valley. It's been important to the evolution of the Fulton Schools of Engineering. What we do is the following when we want to support students. It's through unique facilities, through infrastructure, through labs, through engagements on projects. Second is through simply the people around. That is the faculty, the staff, the programs that we have that really provide the value add. That is, we want our engineers to be domain experts within their discipline, but have a set of experiences across that set of disciplines that we offer that really give them a competitive advantage. Forward-looking companies like the TSMCs, the Intels, onsemi's, Applied Materials, and so forth, they're constantly thinking about what is next, what's the future. They rely on faculty and frankly our students as well for ideas. Okay, the faculty are really thinking about what's on the horizon.
In some ways, this shortage could be seen as a good thing in the long run. Sure, in the short term, it sucks we can't get our hands on cars or game consoles. But it pushed this really essential supply chain into the spotlight. And now, leading into the future, we'll have a resurgence in domestic research, development, and manufacturing, bringing the United States back as a global leader in microelectronics.